Welcome to the Exchange Chambers Podcast. We are an award-winning set of barristers' chambers in Liverpool, Manchester and Leeds, with a proven track record in all major areas of law. In this podcast series, we aim to give you, the listener, an insight into life here at Chambers. We will cover topics such as pupillage applications, interview techniques, advocacy tips and more. We hope you find this and our future podcasts useful and enjoyable. Thank you for everyone for joining us today. This is the second of our podcast series. Today we're going to be talking about why Exchange Chambers. I am joined today by the Head of Chambers, Bill Braithwaite KC, Chief Executive of Chambers, Jonathan Ironson, and pupil Tom Farr, due to start with us in March. Can I ask each of you to introduce yourselves, and I'll start with Bill, if that's okay?
Yep, thanks, Chantal. I'm Bill, and as Chantal says, I'm Head of Chambers, but I'm also Head of Recruitment, and Chantal and I have been, so to speak, Head of Pupillage for 30 years or thereabouts.
Great, thanks, Bill. Jonathan?
Yeah, my name's Jonathan Ironson. I'm the Chief Executive at Exchange Chambers. I took over with impeccable timing, just at the same time that the virus hit the UK. And I think at last count, this is my 25th year in the legal sector. Until I joined Chambers, I was a partner and a solicitor at a Northwest corporate law firm called Brabner's. So I suppose I have the benefit of seeing things from both sides of the profession.
Great, thanks, Jonathan. Tom?
Hi, Chantal. My name's Tom. I'm due to start a criminal pupillage at Exchange Manchester in March. It's getting closer. Every episode we record, getting closer by a matter of weeks.
It is. Thanks, Tom. So just really going into this podcast, we want to talk about how things have changed really over the years in pupillage and what Chambers can bring and offer to you. When I first became involved in pupillage, it was very much a case of Chambers selected their pupil from their process. Today, things are a little different. Pupillage is a two-way street now, and I'm sure Bill will agree with me on that. Still, Chambers has their selection process, but some, if not all pupils, often get one or two offers of pupillage, and they need to make a decision as to which chambers to go to. Bill himself has been involved, as he said earlier, in the pupillage process here at Exchange for over 30 years. Bill, can I ask you for your thoughts on what you feel we can offer students and why you feel they should choose us?
Well, you can, Chantal, but it would take me hours to tell them in detail. And actually, the first thing I'd say is what you've said already, which is that applicants really need to look very carefully at the chambers they've got in mind and to do good research. Because what I think is that if they know what they're looking for and if they research carefully, they will be guided through to a better end result. I mean, next time you ask me, because we're going to go round and round, I'll talk a bit about what I think we can offer. But I'd like to know what Tom thinks, because he's just done the process. And without Tom revealing the fact, I guess he had more than one offer, but you don't have to tell us, Tom.
That's very kind of you, Bill, to make such a generous assumption. So I suppose for me, the process really in terms of why I applied was really broken down into four main areas. Predominantly the sort of quality of work, the type of work, the reputation, or rather the reputation that I perceived Chambers as having, the business acumen, the commercial acumen, which I suppose might be sort of rather specific to me as an individual, but then also just my commitment to the North, and obviously Chambers sort of practical aspect of that in terms of, Exchange being based in the North. So, I mean, as I say, the first point really, the quality of work is something that I mentioned actually in my application in terms of why did I want to join Chambers. So my background was really focused, before I came to the bar, was focused on criminal law reform, particularly around issues of trafficking and exploitation. So I was first and foremost looking for chambers that did that type of work, if not predominantly, then they certainly touched upon it. And my research really started with that. It was very rudimentary. I would go onto Google and just type in Manchester Chambers that do criminal work, trafficking, which is a rather sort of a strange Google search. You to look at my Google history, it would probably throw up a few red flags, but it was the first step really in narrowing down exactly where might be suitable for me, because there are plenty of chambers in Manchester that do excellent work, but they're far removed from my areas of interest. And as I say, the chambers that kept coming up constantly was Exchange. So I dug in a little bit more and went onto the website, and I was sifting through all the cases and the practice areas that the chambers do work within. And there were several cases that caught my eye. One of them was a human trafficking case called Crown and Rafiq, and this was something that I mentioned in my application. And it was just one example of many, but it was an area of work that really aligned with my interest. And to me, this represented, I suppose, a chambers that was actively and consistently engaging in work that I found to be interesting, but also challenging, but also something that I felt I could contribute to. Because as I mentioned in the previous podcast episode, my background was typically focused on sort of advocating for law reform around specifically issues of human trafficking. And I looked at this and I thought, okay, Chambers is doing this exceptional high-level work that aligns with my interests, and further, something that I feel that I can contribute to in the long term, which might be. I was conscious not to overstep my expertise and status within the application, but I was thinking as I was looking at it, this is certainly something that I feel that I can engage with in a way that will benefit Chambers, and it will, as you said, Chantal, will very much be a two-way street. And I suppose that the process, the actual practical process of doing that, and I mentioned, the Google searches and going onto Chambers' website actually speaks to the nature of Chambers itself. So one thing that really, really drew me to Chambers is the, I suppose the best way to put it would be the modern view.
Sorry, Tom, can we just pause a moment? Because you were talking about quality of work, and I thought Johnny would have a pretty good input on the notion of the quality of the work that we look for right across the board.
Yeah, well, that's right, Bill. There are lots of different type of chambers. I think it's worth remembering, some small, some large, some traditional, some progressive, some full service, some specialist. And so all different types of chambers will have all different types of business models. And I think it's probably worth reiterating that Exchange's business model is to focus on quality work. There are some chambers that may focus on volume work and make tenders and pitches for large insurance contracts, for example. But at Exchange, we've stayed away from that volume model and we've concentrated on quality work. And I think that applies right across the board. In crime, for example, at the moment, we've got one of our silks defending Nurse Letby in a case which is attracting national attention. In our business and property team, we've got silks and juniors working on huge, very valuable group litigation cases. So that's the kind of work that we would focus on. In PI and Clinnock, for example, anybody who came into that team would be working with some of the preeminent barristers in the country, dealing with some of the largest claims in the country and some of the most complex work in the country. So that's the kind of work that we've focused on and the business model that we've got in Exchange. And not necessarily every barristers' chambers will have that model.
I suppose, that's a really interesting point, I think, to pick up on is the business model, because this was one of the things that it really struck me, looking around at chambers and seeing the way they're run. And in many ways, it's quite a closed shop. The bar in itself, it's quite difficult to understand how it functions practically, speaking as somebody that's been on one side of it and is now is going through the journey of experiencing the other side. And the things that struck me just reading the Exchange website is the structure of Chambers. And as you mentioned, how is Chambers structured? And this is something that we've talked about, when we were sort of preparing this podcast, is the division between you, Bill, as head of Chambers, and you, Jonathan, as the chief executive. And I was wondering, as somebody who has been on that process, do you think that this is something that will benefit, future pupils and also applicants? And do you think it's something that filters down into why they should consider choosing Exchange, applying to Exchange?
Well, as I said before, there are different types of chambers, and we are a very large full service set. I think by head count, we're the third largest in the country. And so we have to have a structure to match that. We've got 200 barristers, 60 staff. And so we may operate in a different way to which other chambers operate. Obviously, we've got Bill as head of Chambers and myself as chief executive, but then we are run by a management board consisting of Bill, myself, the deputy head of Chambers, and I think 6 other barrister members. That board sets strategy, makes key decisions, but then the day-to-day operational side of the business is run by a senior management team. And that's made up of myself and a director in each of our 3 cities in Liverpool, Manchester, and Leeds. But the differentiation you ask about between Bill and I is an interesting one. So, Bill, do you want to try and describe the head of Chambers and CEO role and relationship?
Yes. Before I do that, I would add we've got 7 main committees with several subcommittees underneath, with a mixture of barristers and staff members, and they contribute a huge amount into the board. In terms of the head of Chambers, it's quite interesting because a lot of the time I wonder what the head of Chambers really does. And then some of the time I realise only too well. And it can be very demanding indeed. Sometimes it's not at all. But I guess, certainly in my case, it equates to executive chairman. And Johnny equates to chief executive officer in an ordinary business. I guess that our board is the same as our corporate board. And although we don't call our committee members the finance director and the marketing director, that is effectively what they are. So that the finance committee meets every month, and the chair of the committee has discussions with Johnny as chief exec and with Claire, who manages all the financial side with Johnny, and they go through that more frequently, and then they all report back into the board. So it is a very corporate structure. But I think, Chantal, one of the things that you and I go back to, because we've been here so long, is that we've always managed, haven't we, to be friendly as well as corporate.
Definitely, and that's one of the things I would say, Bill, that's most important to me as the pupillage and recruitment manager. It's easing people through probably what is one of the most difficult situations of their life. Applying for pupillage is basically, setting themselves up for their career, for life. And I think, it's being friendly, it's being approachable. These are things that matters, that people can come to me. And as I have always said to, applicants, there's no stupid question if you don't know the answer. We are here, we're here to help. We want to get the best out of people through the whole of the process system. The application form, it's not set up to trick anyone. There's no trick questions. We just want to get the answers and find out a bit more about these people. As I think we've said with interviews as well. Jonathan, Bill, you've both done interviews now over a good number of years. What we want is the best out of the applicants. It's not to put them in an awkward situation. It's not to trip them up, down to the point of even when we say to the applicants, you go through for your interview, the chairs are heavy in the meeting rooms, so be aware, they're not there to trip you up or anything, but they are heavy. So be careful when moving them out. But yeah, I mean, one of the main things for me is friendly and approachable. I think, you know, if you've got those, you know, everything else should just follow, hopefully.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. And I suppose I'm the one in the room at the moment that's had experience of other organisations, and both in terms of working there and advising them. And I can safely say that there is a great culture at Exchange. There's a real collegiate culture. There's a real culture of support, and not in terms just of the normal structural sense. So obviously, pupils that come in, we now provide a full training program for pupils, and Chantal, as recruitment and pupillage manager, looks after them and looks after that. But actually, pupils are supported by their supervisor. They're supported also eventually by a mentor that's appointed for them, and also by each other and the clerks and their colleagues. There is a real culture of support at Exchange, and that's something that's really, really valuable, I think, and doesn't unfortunately exist everywhere.
No, and the good thing I think with Chambers as well is, you know, social life. You know, we have nights out, you know, pupils, barristers, staff will often get together and go out for drinks, you know, so that we actually all work together. It's not a separate barristers, staff, you know, pupils. Everyone is there for everybody else. The pupils all have each other, especially now that we offer up to 8 pupilages. You know, they have each other to go through the process with. They have barristers, supervisors, and it's always, as it has been, an open door policy. You know, there's always someone to answer a question.
And this was something as well that really did come across in the interviews, and separately from the interviews, Bill, I know that you have, as you know, just going back to the pupillage forum that we had last week, you were really, really keen to impress this in that the nature of Chambers and the environment of Chambers is one where there is a lot of investment in pupils and a lot of investment in people who have an interest in Chambers. And this was clear to me. And I think that, you know, it's easy enough to say this, you know, in advance of an interview or in a press release or, you know, on a website somewhere. But I think that it's very rare that actually you get into a room, or as was the case for me, a Zoom room, and you're sat there and the environment is such that you are put at ease. You are made to feel welcome, even if you are going through, as you said, Chantal, what is quite a grueling process in terms of the length of it and the stress. Is that there, you know, Exchange does go to great lengths to make it as comfortable as possible, whilst, you know, giving you the platform to demonstrate, put your best foot forward effectively. And that was absolutely the case for me.
Bill, do you want to add anything to that at all?
I'd like to ask Tom a question, actually. I always like people, like interviewers, when we invite applicants into the room for the interview, I like the interviewer who does that to say at the outset, we're not here to trick you. We really are here to see the best of you. And I wondered, Tom, if somebody had said that to you.
This is going back a couple of years now. So in terms of the actual specifics as to what was said to me, I can't remember exactly. But that being said, that is something that is or was made clear to me through the documentation you're provided. You know, you only need to read the pupillage document in advance of applying for that to come across. And as I say, you know, it's one thing having that written down, but actually I think that, and even more so, it's one thing just saying it, but I think that actually having it put into practice and implemented within the environment is noticeable. You know, it is that thing where you sit there and you think, okay, yeah, they are actually putting into practice what they say they want to do. And, you know, my first panel was comprised of, it was David Temkin KC, Caroline Abraham, and Sarah Griffin. And it was the case where the questions were presented to me, and it was allowed, it was made such that, you know, I was able to give the best possible answer. And Jonathan, I think you were on my second interview panel as well, and there were a few other people there. I think it was about 6 people overall. But even that, you know, it's daunting. You get into the room and you're faced with six or seven Zoom screens, but everybody there is keen and committed to you presenting yourself in the best way. So yes, it absolutely comes across, Bill.
But when you say 6 or 7, we don't have 6 or 7 interviewers, do we, Chantal?
No, I think there was 4 on the Zoom and myself as well. So, and obviously we had 4 interviewers, myself and Tom. So you will have had probably, sort of a large number of screens on there.
I say 6 or 7. It may have been that I got in and I you just see it and it stands out. And I was thinking, there's 20, there's 30 or 50 people in front of me. So it's probably one of those memories that, it is a latent memory. It gets worse.
All these faces just peering at you.
I know, yeah, but no, it was as pleasant an experience as it could have been.
Just to take you all back to the heart of this podcast is what Chambers can offer applicants looking to apply, obviously, in this next round. If I was to ask you for the 3 top things of what we could offer, Jonathan, what would you say are the top 3?
It's an interesting question. So I'd start with career development. I think that's something that is really at the heart of everything we do at Exchange. It's something that we focus on. And I'd say career development for all of our members, whatever their aims are. In other words, you might have some barristers who are focused on getting silk. You may have some who are focused on getting to the bench. Others may be looking to bring in and work on more and more complex cases. And others might understandably just be thinking about fee levels and maintaining high fee levels and income. All of those aims, whatever they may be, we're happy to help our barristers achieve at Exchange. So that's the first thing I'd say, career development. I think the support we offer to pupils when they come into Chambers is pretty unique. We've got 8 pupils now per year coming into Exchange. And we have an internal program of training that I'm not sure all chambers offer. And that internal program of training includes topics such as advocacy, business development, communicating with solicitors, marketing. We want to help our pupils do 3 things, I think, when they come in. First of all, we're looking for them to have and enjoy a great training experience. We're looking to get them signed off to the standard they need to be to practice as a barrister. But third, and really importantly, we're looking to get them to the standard required to become a tenant at Exchange, which is something a little bit different. So it's that support and that guidance that you will get at Exchange that you might not necessarily get everywhere.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jonathan. So, Tom, what were the sort of top 3 things that you looked for when you were thinking of applying to Chambers? What did we stand out for?
This goes back to sort of what I was saying at the beginning, really, is the quality of work, the type of work as well. It's, as I said and alluded to, there are other excellent chambers in Manchester, but they don't do work that that doesn't hold an interest for me as an applicant or as somebody that you go through law school, you go through a career in law, professional career, and you find out what you enjoy and what you don't enjoy. And I think that you have to be discerning in where you're applying to in that regard, because I think that if you imagine the process, it's so grueling, and then to come out on the other side, if you apply somewhere that isn't doing the type of work that you want to do, it's just going to be a real struggle, I would think, to then go and do 12 more months of that, and then to look to possibly shift at the end of it anyway. So it's the quality of work and the type of work. As I said, the reputation as well of Exchange is just it spans the country, and I know that you have. You've got the Legal 500 and you've got the Chambers and Partners rankings and things like this and all the official awards, but you speak to anybody, and I know barristers who have many years into practice, who practice at different chambers, and they said, when I told them I'd got pupillage at Exchange, said, it's a fantastic chambers. It really, really is a fantastic chambers, and that's there to see from, you look at the expansion, chambers that don't have that quality of work and that constant growth, wouldn't be expanding constantly across 3 cities with increasing number of members. Or I'm sure you may correct me here, Jonathan or Bill, but year on year, there are, every time I check the website, there's the number of members has gone up, which I think is a testament to the success. And the third point, which I think again is I didn't want to be too naive, in my applications, but the practical side of things is the fact it's in the north. I'm from Manchester, I live here, I have a house here, and perhaps I was a little bit naive when I was applying, in that I only applied to places in Manchester. But again, I was fortunate that I was successful, and I think that people really should consider that a lot of people think I need to go to London. I need the best chambers are in London, and I don't think that's there are great chambers in London, but I don't think that's the only thing. There are absolutely fantastic chambers up north, and the Northern Circuit is amazing. Manchester's a great city, as Leeds and Liverpool are as well. So the fact that Chambers has that choice and that established reputation in the north was key for me.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Tom. Bill, is there anything you'd like to add to that before we sort of come to the conclusion of this podcast?
Well, I will. I'll instead of doing 3, I'm going to rattle through quite a few, actually, so I'm cheating a bit. I would start with nurture and friendliness, which I think is core to what we do. I agree wholeheartedly with Johnny about career development, because you just cannot overstate. I know it's not obvious when you're young necessarily, but the idea of your career being developed in a way that suits you by a system that is surrounding you with people who really care is, I think, fundamentally important. Business management. The reason we have survived as we have, and lots of chambers don't survive, is because we have been well managed for 30 plus years, and we've been progressive. And for people who are exploring in business management terms, everybody talks the talk, but if you want to research, you can discover the evidence that supports what I say about business management. It isn't only having a chief executive, but it is having the support staff members who help us all to do the things we do. And it covers PR, marketing, HR, IT, goodness knows what I'm forgetting, but anybody who researches will find we have a proper corporate structure. So I think that's really important. And a point Tom made, which I'm not sure if it is completely obvious to an outside observer, and the PI because it's what I know is a good example, is that we do indeed have a national profile. And if you research individual barristers, you'll see PI Barristers of the Year. We've got loads of awards. We've just got a competition Barrister of the Year. So the idea that we cover the country, being a full service set, I think is really important, because historically, London is much more expensive. I mean, there are chambers there where you have to pay a quarter of your income to fund your chambers, because remember, we're all self-employed, and chambers are run by each individual member paying a percentage of their income into the chamber's kitty to fund everything. Johnny can correct me if I'm getting this much wrong. Our average contribution is about 12%. Some we think are 25% plus. But we would say we've got the advantage of wonderful places to live, a wonderful surrounding area, and in addition, we cover the country and can excel in our chosen fields in the whole country. So lots and lots of reasons why I think it's a great place to be, but then I would say that.
But you're correct, we are. Oh, no, thank you. I just want to say thank you to the 3 of you for joining me today on this podcast. And hopefully the students will get some insight into chambers and find it useful for, when they're just making the decisions of where they're going to go to for their pupillage. So thank you to Bill, to Johnny and to Tom, and we will see you soon.
Thank you. Thank you to
Thanks,
you,
Chantal.
Chantal.
These podcasts, brought to you by Exchange Chambers, are offered only for general information and educational purposes.